My restaurant manager had been skimming a percentage off every server's tip pool for 2 years before I caught it. Not obviously. Just enough each shift that no individual server ever noticed the gap. I noticed it on a Wednesday night because I happen to be the kind of person who actually adds up his own numbers before he goes home. I am Julian. I am 26, and I have worked as a server at a mid-sized restaurant in suburban Chicago for 3 years. Our restaurant pools tips across the front-of-house staff and distributes them at the end of each shift based on hours worked, calculated by our shift manager, a man named Russ, who had held that position for 6 years. I started tracking my own numbers about 4 months before I found the discrepancy, not out of suspicion, just out of habit, because I was saving for a car and wanted to know exactly what I was earning each week. I kept a simple log on my phone. Total sales I had contributed to, hours worked, and the tip amount I actually received at the end of each shift. On a Wednesday night in March, my log did not match what Russ had calculated. The gap was small, $11 on a shift where I had expected closer to $140. Small enough that I almost dismissed it as a math mistake. But I went back through 6 weeks of my own logs and found the same kind of gap on every single shift, always somewhere between 4 and 12% below what the math should have produced. I did not say anything to Russ. I started talking quietly to a few coworkers I trusted, asking if they tracked their own tip totals. Most did not. 2 of them did, casually, and both confirmed the same pattern. Consistent, small shortfalls that never quite added up to a number anyone would complain about on its own. I built a shared spreadsheet. Over 6 weeks, 3 of us logged every shift independently, comparing our own totals against what we actually received. The pattern held across all 3 of us, every single time, always in the same direction. I requested copies of the restaurant's official tip distribution records under state wage and hour law, which requires employers to maintain and provide these records upon employee request. The official records showed total tip pool amounts that were consistently 3 to 5% lower than what our own sales-based calculations indicated should have been collected. I filed a wage complaint with the State Department of Labor, attaching our 6 weeks of independently logged data, the discrepancy pattern across 3 employees, and the gap between the restaurant's recorded totals and the actual sales data pulled from the point-of-sale system, which I had also requested under the same records law. The Department of Labor's investigation expanded beyond just the 3 of us. Investigators interviewed the full front-of-house staff and reviewed 2 years of point-of-sale data against tip distribution records. The pattern Russ had created was consistent across the entire period, a skim of roughly 4% off the total tip pool, redirected through a manual adjustment he made before final distribution each night, a step in the process only he had access to. Over 2 years, across approximately 40 servers who had worked under him during that period, the total amount skimmed came to just under $91,000. Russ was terminated immediately once the restaurant's ownership reviewed the Department of Labor's preliminary findings. He was found liable for wage theft under state law, which in this case required not just repayment of the stolen wages, but liquidated damages calculated as an additional penalty on top of the original amount, bringing total restitution to just over $170,000, distributed among every server who had worked there during the 2-year period, whether they still work there or not. I received $4,100. The server who had been there the longest received over $9,000. I want every tipped worker watching this to understand something simple. You are entitled to your tip distribution records. Track your own numbers if your job involves pooled tips or commission. The gap that feels too small to mention is exactly the gap someone is counting on you never mentioning. 40 servers got their money back because one of us happened to add things up on a Wednesday night. If you believe people who do the work deserve every dollar they earned, subscribe. A new story of justice every single week. I will see you there.